Welcome to another episode of Meal Prep Monday. I'm Allison Schaaf, and today I'm going to talk about adding flavor to your food. So this is one of the most important aspects of meal prep, right? You want your food to taste good. If you're trying to eat healthier, you're not going to stick with it if the food doesn't taste good. So today I want to talk about ways that you can add flavor and add seasoning to your food. So I have 5 different kind of go-to ways that I add flavor to my food to make it really pop and have that tasty quality to it. So let's just jump right in. The first, if you're a Prep Dish subscriber and you use my meal plans, you're not surprised that it's citrus. So I'm a big fan of using citrus, lemons, limes, oranges, even grapefruit. And I use not only the juice, but also the zest. So the juice is really good and to add kind of a nice brightness to dishes. So sometimes if you find that a dish is lacking, I think the first thought is always like, oh, it needs salt. But sometimes really just that nice acidic citrus juice is going to like give it a nice pop. So some examples of this, if you're doing sauteed greens like kale or chard, some nice lemon juice is going to really help brighten that flavor. And then perhaps my favorite is if you have a soup. So think like maybe a Thai curry type soup or a chili or a Mexican stew. If you add some fresh lime juice, everything just kind of pops and it brings everything together. So that's one of my favorite hacks, is just adding some citrus juice to help bring the flavors out. And then also not forgetting that the zest can add a lot of flavor as well. So the zest is just the outer peel of the citrus, and that can be really nice, especially baked goods. Adding a little orange or lemon zest to a baked good just really kind of gives it this little hint of citrus that's really nice as well. The second seasoning hack that I use is it's related to citrus, and maybe technically citrus falls underneath this, but it's going to an acid. So this kind of goes back to the soup example of like, if you feel like a dish is missing something and it kind of like it's feeling a little dull is how I could describe it. Acid really helps the flavor to pop and be a little more bright. So acids would include citrus, but also things like vinegars. So balsamic vinegar, apple cider vinegar, a red or white wine vinegar. There's actually a huge variety of vinegars and specialty vinegars. I try and avoid using, I mean, as much as I love all the variety of vinegars they have out there, in my recipes, I don't go too crazy here because I don't want my meal plan subscribers to have to purchase 20 different varieties of vinegars to keep in their pantry. So that's why I tend to kind of have my staple vinegars that I use in my recipes. But that being said, if you're ever looking to kind of change things up and add some new flavor profiles to your dishes, vinegars would be a really fun way to go. You could go and there's, I think it's called orange muscat vinegar. My mother-in-law actually cooks with that a lot, and it's really adds this kind of nice flavor to things. So play around with maybe buying some specialty vinegars and finding some dishes to put those into. This can help mix things up as well, so they don't get as, I love balsamic vinegar in my dishes, but after a while, it's kind of nice to mix things up as well. So playing around with the acids in a dish, especially vinegars, is a fun way to keep seasonings entertaining, I guess you could say. So the third way that I like to add flavor to dishes is through dried herbs and spices. So this one seems a little obvious, right? Like, okay, yeah, you add spices or herbs to your dish and it adds flavor. But the thing I'm going to point out here that I use more than you might think, and that is spice blends and herb blends. But you also have to be a little cautious with this as well. You need to read ingredient labels. So a lot of herb and spice blends rely on things like added sugar or MSG, or the main ingredient is salt. So you really have to be cautious and read the ingredient label to make sure it's still kind of healthy ingredients that you want to be consuming. But if everything's clear, then herb and spice blends are really good way to add new flavor profiles into your meals and dishes, and play around with it and find some that you really like, and that can be a fun way to I was going to say spice things up, but okay, spice things up. And two brands that I really like. So Primal Palette as well as Balanced Bite Spices are both two herb and spice blend brands that really use high quality ingredients. And I've played around with some of their spice blends and really enjoy those, even just for like, seasoning potatoes in a new way. It's just fun to have a new blend. So if you're looking for some new and fun ways to kind of jazz up your meals, and look at some blends. And I should also note here that you can make your own. So if you want to get on and find some recipes and make your own spice blends, this is something I'll do from time to time. I have a really good Moroccan spice blend that I like. It was inspired after our honeymoon in Africa. I found a recipe and then kind of made it my own. And this one, it's on the blog, so I can link it in the show notes. But, a few times a year, I'll get the ingredients for that and make it. And it's kind of nice to have on hand to mix things up. So I know that that's one that I like. And then there's a few that we purchased that I know that I really like. So, after you play around, you'll find your go-tos that can really help add kind of new and interesting flavors to your meals. And then the fourth way that I like to add flavor to my meals is fresh herbs. So to me, this one really huge. I think fresh herbs just really add something special to a dish. Things like basil and mint and parsley and green onions, like all of these flavors can really elevate a dish from blah to like, oh, this is like a really nice fresh dish. So I like adding them to salads, to especially grain dishes, even a sprinkling of fresh herbs over your roasted vegetables. Or if you have a soup, like adding some chopped cilantro can really add that extra something that makes the soup stand out. And something I'll point out with fresh herbs is I like to play around with growing my own. I'm by no means an expert on this. I have killed plenty of herb plants, especially, they say, oh, you can't kill mint. I've killed mint plenty of times, although I do have a pot of mint in my kitchen currently, and it's been doing well for at least a year. So maybe I'm doing better with mint these days. And then outside, I have rosemary bushes that I can always use. And sage, for some reason, has done really well for me lately. In the summer, I like to have fresh basil. Cilantro, I've had some success, but a lot of failures with as well. So that's when I end up purchasing quite a bit too. But, if you're wanting to use fresh herbs, it might be fun to play around with an herb garden, either in your kitchen or outside, because this really helps if you can just go grab a handful at a time to throw into dishes. It really kind of makes it more special to have those fresh herbs in there. And then the fifth tip for adding flavor to foods, and okay, I said spices was obvious. This is probably the most obvious, but one that I don't want to overlook, and that is salt. So a lot of times I'll start with the first four that I mentioned and see if they can help. But at the end of the day, nothing's going to add flavor like salt. Salt is really going to help your food come together and have that nice flavor. And I find that sometimes home cooks will shy away from salt because we've all been told, like, oh, don't oversalt your foods, it's not healthy. But having gone to culinary school and cooked in kitchens, I've learned that, adding salt does add flavor. So if I've tried some of the other tricks and it still needs something, I am not shy with salt. And sometimes I have a bit of a heavy hand with salt, even, I guess you could say. And it's because I know that I'm cooking all of my meals from scratch. If you're not using processed ingredients, you're not using a box of anything, there's no salt added. And if you're using a lot of fresh vegetables, there's a lot of potassium in there that's going to help offset any of the potential negative side effects of the sodium in the salt. So, don't shy away from using it completely. All of these different flavor hacks can be utilized, but then at the end of the day, again, just salt really helps. So that's depending on where you're at with your cooking. Some people already know this and maybe they're using too much. So this is, you don't need to listen to this, but if you are just like really afraid to use salt, make sure you're keeping that in there. It's going to help, kind of like bringing it back to what I was talking about in the beginning. If you're trying to eat healthier, more whole, real foods, you really want them to taste good. That way your family starts craving them and enjoying them, and it's not going to be sustainable unless it tastes good. So when I'm making a recipe or cooking at home, my number one priority is always making sure that the flavors are there and that everything is tasting good. So then that way, this way and style of eating is sustainable and enjoyable. So that's it for today. But if you want more meal planning tips and hacks, go to prepdish.com/podcast to sign up for our newsletter and get a free 1 week meal plan. Again, you can go to prepdish.com/podcast. Or you can also text the number 33777. Text the word meal prep, all one word. Again, the number is 33777, and that will also get you signed up for our newsletter, and you can have that free 1 week meal plan. If you like this episode, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. And I'll see you next Monday.